Everything that we're going to talk about for the next hour and a half or 2 hours is in your notes. So you can put your pens away unless you want to write questions. And if you have questions as we go, raise your hand. We'll answer your questions as we go along. Casual. We're going to talk a lot about thread. We're not going to mention thread brands, other brands in specific. So I'm going to ask questions. What thread do you like? What threads cause problems? Respond generically, not the brand name, but the type of thread. Question number 1 is, what is the absolute most frustrating, headache-causing thread out there? What gives you more headaches than anything else? Metallic? That's what I hear most of the time. How many have metallic threads at home? We all do. How many have been frustrated with metallics? Why bother holding on to them? Why do you keep them in your sewing stash?
Because they're pretty.
They're pretty. And that's why we bought them in the first place. Beautiful sparkle. I'm going to show you a 30-second test. You will determine, is the metallic good or is it bad? It's just that simple. When you go home, go to your thread stash, pull out your metallic thread. Go to your friend's house and say, hey, let me see your metallic thread. Go to a store. Hopefully they would have an open spool before you buy. Unwind 3 feet. And we're going to let it hang. If it hangs in a nice smooth U shape, it's a good metallic thread. If it tangles up off the spool like a twisted up telephone cord, it's a bad metallic thread and you're going to have problems in your machine. That's what most metallic thread does. That's why it has a horrible reputation. Here's a sample right off the spool and watch what happens. If you can see this tangling, imagine what happens to this metallic thread as it goes along the thread path. If it were twisted up like that and it hits the tension disc, what's going to happen? Because a twisted thread is already at least twice as thick as a single strand of metallic. Your tension is set for a single strand. You have it twisted twice as thick, it's going to pinch it. And once you pinch a metallic thread, it's shot. Other threads are a little more sturdy, a poly and a cotton, but a metallic, you pinch it, it's done. A good metallic should come off the spool and hang nice and smooth. I hope it works. Nice and smooth without the tangling and without the twisting. This one, as it goes along the thread path, is going to be nice and smooth. You're not going to get the tangling. It will not be pinched in the tension disc. And by the time it hits the needle, there's no twisting. That's all it is to a good metallic thread. The reason why is in the manufacturing. There's so many different aspects to a metallic thread. Imagine you have a long core of metallic. This is how it starts. You have a core thread. Then you have a sheet of aluminum foil. A good metallic is silver foil. So you have either aluminum foil or silver foil in a nice sheet, and we're going to laser cut long, thin strips of foil. Will you hold that, please? Now I have this long strip of foil that I have to wrap around and around and around that core, and that's how we make metallic thread. But somehow I have to adhere that foil to the core, because this is going to go high speed through your machine, and it can't slip off. The poor metallics, they cut corners in the manufacturing process. Here's what I really don't understand. Why do so many companies have a metallic thread that causes so many problems and put it on a very tiny spool? There's only one reason, because we buy it. 150 yards, $4. Most of you have probably taken a chance already on a $4 spool of shiny, sparkly thread. Do you buy a second or a third or a fourth? One thing to look for on a metallic thread, the diameter of the core. This one is about 1 inch in diameter. This one, the inner core, is probably less than a 1/2 inch. It takes 3 or 4 revolutions here to every 1 here. Another thing we like is, on a metallic thread, we like the cones better than the spools. Because it's such a sensitive thread, metallic is almost always wound too tight. Watch what happens when it comes off the spool. See the wave? Like a permanent wave? In the thread world, we call that permanent wave memory. It's wound too tight. It's difficult to wind too tight on a cone, but on a spool, very easy to wind too tight. You get the permanent wave, and that's what tends to twisting. Of course, there's more than just the cone versus the spool. How tight is it wound? Did they cut corners in the manufacturing process? What core did they use? And what quality of aluminum versus silver did they use? Here's the real good news. We're going to give you a math test. 150 yards, $4. This is 1,090 yards. About 7 of these equals 1 of these. What's 7 times 4? 28. The equivalent amount is $15.75. Almost half the cost yard for yard. The question is, why don't stores sell this? Because they know that the majority of customers will not risk $15 on an unknown. But anyone will risk $4.